The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Isaac Harrison's world went black. And when he opened his eyes again, he was staring at wooden beams he did not recognize in a room that smelled of lavender and old leather. His head pounded like 1,000 horses stampeding through his skull. Every breath felt like inhaling shattered glass. Isaac tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate, muscles screaming in protest. The last thing he remembered clearly was riding towards St. Joe, Missouri in late March of 1873, carrying a letter for his brother. But something felt wrong, deeply wrong, like waking from a dream only to find yourself in another. The door creaked open, and a woman stepped inside carrying a basin of water. She had golden hair pulled back in a practical braid, and her eyes were the color of sage growing wild on the prairie. When she saw him awake, those eyes widened and the basin nearly slipped from her hands. "Isaac," she breathed, setting the water down quickly and rushing to his bedside. "Thank God! I thought we'd lost you." He stared at her, searching his memory for any recognition, any spark of familiarity. Nothing came. "I'm sorry, miss, but do I know you?" The woman froze, her hand halfway to his forehead. Her face went pale. "What did you say?" I asked. "If I know you. I don't mean to be rude, but I cannot place your face." Isaac frowned, trying to push through the fog in his mind. "Where am I? What happened?" "I was riding to St. Joe to deliver something for my brother, and now—" "Isaac, this is St. Joe. You have been here for over a year now." Her voice trembled. "My name is Grace Brennan. I am your wife." The words hit him like a physical blow. Wife. Impossible. He would remember getting married. He would remember this beautiful woman with worry etched across her features and tears gathering in her eyes. "That cannot be right. I am not married. I was just—" He trailed off, realizing he could not actually pinpoint when that ride to St. Joe had been. The memory felt recent, crystal clear, but something about it seemed distant too, like looking through water. Grace sat down heavily in the chair beside the bed, her hands shaking as she pressed them to her face. When she looked up again, her eyes were red but determined. "What is the last thing you remember? Tell me everything." Isaac closed his eyes, trying to sort through the jumbled mess in his head. "I was in Kansas. My brother Samuel asked me to deliver a letter to a business partner in St. Joe. It was March, I think, 1873. I remember riding out, taking the trail along the river because the roads were still muddy from spring rain." "Isaac, it is April 1874. You have lost an entire year." The room seemed to tilt. An entire year just gone. How was that possible? What happened to me? Grace reached out slowly, as if afraid he might bolt, and took his hand. Her touch was warm, familiar in a way his mind would not acknowledge, but his body seemed to. "3 days ago you were shot during a bank robbery. You were not part of it," she added quickly, seeing his alarm. "You were trying to stop it. The bullet grazed your skull. Dr. Matthews said it was a miracle you survived at all, but he warned us there might be complications. I never imagined—" "Tell me," Isaac said, gripping her hand tighter without quite knowing why. "Tell me about this year I have lost. Tell me about you, about us." Grace took a shaky breath, and then she began to speak. Her voice was soft at first, hesitant, but it grew stronger as she wove the story of their past year together. Isaac had arrived in St. Joe in March of 1873, just as he remembered, but he had never left. The business partner his brother wanted him to meet, a man named Thomas Brennan, had died 2 days before Isaac's arrival. Heart failure, sudden and unexpected. Grace was Thomas's daughter, 22 years old and suddenly alone in the world. Her father had been a freight company owner, and upon his death, everything fell to her. But the business was in trouble. Debts had piled up, and several employees were taking advantage of the situation, stealing from the shipments and keeping profits for themselves. "I was drowning," Grace said, staring at their joined hands. I did not know who to trust. The lawyer handling Father's estate suggested I sell everything and move back east to live with distant cousins I had never met. But this was my home. Father built that company from nothing, and I could not just let it go. Isaac had been at the funeral, Grace explained, paying respects to a man he had never met out of duty to his brother's business relationship. Afterward, he had found Grace standing alone by her father's grave, and something in her devastated expression had moved him. He had introduced himself, explained his connection, and offered his condolences. Then he had done something unexpected. He had offered to help. You said you knew about freight hauling, that you had worked with your father's company back in Kansas before he passed. You offered to stay for a few weeks, just to help me sort through the mess and figure out what was salvageable. Grace's lips curved into a small, sad smile. You were supposed to leave after 2 weeks, but those 2 weeks became a month, and that month became longer. Together, they had uncovered the employees who were stealing. Isaac had ridden with the freight wagons himself, learning the routes and the business from the ground up. He had proven himself invaluable, not just as a worker, but as someone Grace could trust completely. Slowly, they had turned the business around. Somewhere in all of that we fell in love, Grace said softly. I cannot pinpoint the exact moment. Maybe it was the night we stayed up until dawn going through ledgers, and you made terrible coffee that we drank anyway. Maybe it was when you got into a fistfight with Jack Morrison, when he called me an uppity woman who should know her place. You came back with a black eye and the biggest grin, so proud of yourself. She laughed, but it came out choked. Or maybe it was earlier, that very first day, and everything else was just us catching up to what we already knew. They had married in October, a simple ceremony with a few friends. They had moved into this house, her father's house, and made it their own. The freight business continued to grow. Isaac had proven himself not just capable but brilliant at managing the routes and negotiations. Life had been good. Hard, because running a business always was, but good. And then 3 days ago, you walked into that bank at exactly the wrong moment, Grace finished. Or maybe the right moment, because if you had not been there, the teller might be dead instead of just shaken up. You threw yourself at the robber when he pointed his gun at Mary Chen. The shot went wild and hit you instead. The sheriff caught the man. You have been unconscious ever since. Isaac lay back against the pillows, his head spinning with more than just pain. A whole year, a whole life, a wife. All of it was gone from his memory like it had never existed. He looked at Grace, really looked at her. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that. There was a strength in her bearing, an intelligence in her eyes, and a deep, unmistakable love in the way she looked at him. His heart ached with the wrongness of it all. This woman loved him, had built a life with him, and he was a stranger to her now. I am sorry, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. I wish I could remember. I wish I could be the man you married. You are the man I married, Grace said fiercely. The bullet took your memories, not your soul. You are still Isaac Harrison. You are still the man who stayed to help a grieving stranger. You are still the man who makes terrible coffee and throws himself in front of guns to protect people. Over the following days, Grace rarely left Isaac's side. Dr. Matthews visited regularly, an older gentleman with kind eyes and gentle hands who examined Isaac thoroughly and declared him physically on the mend, even if his memory showed no signs of returning. The brain is a mystery, the doctor said on his 3rd visit. I have seen men lose years and regain them in an instant. I have seen others never remember at all. There is no way to know which you will be, son. My advice is to focus on healing and try not to force it. Sometimes pushing too hard does more harm than good. Grace took it upon herself to help Isaac relearn his life. She showed him through the house, pointing out things he had built or repaired. A bookshelf in the parlor that leaned slightly to the left, because he had insisted he could build it without help, and had been too stubborn to fix it properly when it came out crooked. A kitchen window he had replaced after a summer storm. His clothes in the wardrobe, worn boots by the door, a hat hanging on a peg that apparently he wore every day. She took him to the freight office once he was strong enough to walk that far. It was a large building near the docks where riverboats came in, and the sign above the door read, Brennan Freight Company. Inside, several employees greeted him with obvious relief and joy. They told stories about him, about jobs they had completed together, about the time he had negotiated a contract with a supplier who initially refused to work with a woman-owned business. Isaac had apparently been very persuasive. A young man named Peter, who could not have been more than 19, shook Isaac's hand enthusiastically. "Mr. Harrison, it is so good to see you up and about. Miss Grace has been beside herself. We all have been. You saved my sister, you know. Mary, the bank teller. She said you did not even hesitate, just moved." Isaac did not remember, but the story made something warm unfurl in his chest anyway. "I am glad she is safe." Every story, every detail Grace and others shared painted a picture of a life Isaac desperately wished he could recall. He had been happy here. That much was obvious. He had found purpose and love and a home, and now he was an outsider looking in at his own existence. The nights were the hardest. Grace insisted he take the bed while she slept in the spare room, despite his protests. He would lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to force memories that refused to come. Sometimes he would hear her crying through the walls, and the sound tore at him in ways he could not fully explain. One evening, about a week after he had woken up, Isaac found Grace sitting on the porch in the twilight. She was staring out at the street, her expression distant and sad. He sat down beside her, careful not to sit too close. The distance between them felt like a chasm. "You do not have to keep doing this," Isaac said quietly. "Showing me around, telling me stories, pretending everything is fine. I know this must be unbearable for you." Grace turned to look at him, surprise flickering across her face. "What are you talking about? I am a stranger to you now." "Oh, I may look like your husband, but I do not remember our wedding or our life together. I do not remember falling in love with you." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "It is not fair to you. If you want to leave, to move on, I would understand. I could sign papers, arrange things so the business stays yours. You should not be trapped with someone who cannot even remember your face." For a long moment, Grace just stared at him. Then, to his surprise, she laughed. It was not a happy sound, but it was not entirely bitter either. "Isaac Harrison, you really are still the same man. Do you know what you said to me the day you proposed?" He shook his head. "We were standing in the freight yard, and I was upset because a major client had just pulled out. I said maybe everyone was right, maybe I should just give up and sell. And you took my hands and you said, 'Grace Brennan, I have never met anyone as stubborn or strong as you. If you want to keep fighting, I will stand beside you through every battle. And if you want to stop fighting, I will stand beside you then too. But I will never leave you to face anything alone.' Then you asked me to marry you right there in the mud and the chaos." She reached out and took his hand. "You do not remember me, but I remember you. I remember every moment. And I meant my vows, Isaac, for better or worse. This is definitely worse, but I am not going anywhere." Isaac felt something crack open in his chest. He looked down at their joined hands, at the simple gold band on her finger that matched the one on his own. He might not remember the promises they had made, but he could feel the weight of them now. "I want to try," he said. "Not to remember, because maybe that will never happen, but to know you, to learn who you are now fresh. Would that be all right?" Grace smiled, and it was the first real smile he had seen from her since waking up. "I would like that very much." They started over in small ways. Grace stopped trying to jog his memory with stories and instead just talked to him about the present. She told him about her day at the office, about shipments coming in and contracts being negotiated. She talked about the town, the people in it, the rhythms of life in St. Joe. Isaac listened and asked questions, and slowly, he began to build a new picture of this world he had forgotten. He started working again too, carefully at first. Peter walked him through current contracts and introduced him to clients Isaac apparently knew well. It was strange, being greeted warmly by people he did not recognize, but he found he enjoyed the work itself. The logistics of moving goods from place to place, the negotiations, even the physical labor of loading and unloading wagons. His body remembered even if his mind did not. One afternoon, he was helping load a shipment of fabric bound for Kansas when a memory flickered. Not a full memory, just a flash. The smell of canvas and dust, someone laughing, sunshine on his face. It was gone as quickly as it came, but it left him breathless. That evening he told Grace about it. They were cooking dinner together, something that had become their routine. Isaac was terrible at cooking, apparently a consistent trait across the memory gap, but he could chop vegetables without injuring himself. It was not much, he admitted. Just a feeling, really, but it felt real. Like maybe it was actually there, just buried. Grace's face lit up with hope. "That is wonderful, Isaac. Maybe more will come." "Maybe," he agreed. But even as he said it, he realized something. Whether the memories came back or not, he was starting to build something new with Grace. He was starting to fall for her all over again. It was impossible not to. She was remarkable. Watching her run the freight company was like watching an artist at work. She was fair but firm with employees, shrewd in negotiations, and tireless in her dedication. But she was also kind. She brought meals to elderly neighbors. She paid her workers well and gave them time off when they needed it. She had a sharp sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh, and she was patient with him in ways he did not deserve. She never pressured him, never made him feel guilty for not remembering. She just existed beside him, steady and strong, letting him find his way. One evening in early May, they were walking back from the office together as the sun set over the Missouri River. The air was warm, carrying the scent of the water and growing things. Grace was telling him about a difficult negotiation she had handled that day, animated and passionate. Isaac watched her talk, the way her eyes sparkled when she was excited, the graceful movements of her hands, and something in him shifted decisively. He did not remember falling in love with her the first time, but he was definitely falling in love with her now. "Grace," he interrupted gently. She stopped mid-sentence. "Yes. Would you like to go to dinner with me? A proper dinner, I mean, at the hotel restaurant, like courting." Grace blinked at him. "Courting, we got married, and I do not remember it. We fell in love, and I do not remember that either. But I would like to fall in love with you now, if you will let me, properly, the way you deserve." For a moment, Grace just stared at him. Then her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, I would like that very much." The next evening, Isaac put on his best shirt and jacket, the ones Grace said he had worn to their wedding. He picked wildflowers from the field behind their house and met Grace in the parlor. When she came down the stairs in a green dress that matched her eyes, his breath caught. She was stunning. "You are beautiful," he said, and meant it with his whole heart. She blushed, taking the flowers. "Thank you. You clean up well yourself, Mr. Harrison." They walked to the Patty House Hotel, one of the finest establishments in St. Joe. Isaac had arranged for a table by the window overlooking the street. Over dinner, they talked like new acquaintances getting to know each other, except there was a comfort beneath it all, a foundation neither of them fully understood but both could feel. "Tell me about growing up here," Isaac said. "I know your father ran the freight business, but what was it like? What did you want to be when you were young?" Grace laughed. "Oh, I had grand plans. I wanted to be an explorer, traveling the world and discovering new places. I read every book about travel and adventure I could get my hands on. My mother died when I was 8, so it was just father and me. He indulged my wild ideas, but he also taught me the business. By the time I was 16, I realized I loved St. Joe. I loved the river and the constant flow of people and goods. I loved the way the town was alive with possibility. So I decided I would explore through the business instead, sending freight to distant places and connecting people." "That is a good dream," Isaac said. "Have you achieved it?" "I think so. The business reaches all the way to California now, and we are negotiating contracts in Texas. Through our work, we help people start new lives, build new things. It may not be as glamorous as sailing to distant continents, but it matters." Isaac reached across the table and took her hand. "It absolutely matters. What you have built is extraordinary, Grace." She squeezed his fingers. "What we have built. You are as much a part of it as I am, even if you do not remember." After dinner, they walked along the river. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the water. Isaac offered Grace his arm, and she took it without hesitation. They walked in comfortable silence for a while before Grace spoke. "Can I ask you something? About before you lost your memory, of course. Do you remember loving anyone? Before you came to St. Joe, I mean. Was there someone else?" Isaac thought about it. His memories before that ride to St. Joe were intact. His childhood in Kansas, working with his father and brother in their small cattle operation. A few passing fancies when he was younger, but nothing serious. No one that mattered. "I always thought maybe I was not meant for that kind of love. I watched my brother Samuel marry and build a family, and I was happy for him, but it never seemed like something for me." "What changed?" "You, apparently," Isaac said with a small smile. "The man I was a year ago met you and decided you were worth staying for, worth fighting for, worth loving. I may not remember it, but I understand it completely, because I am making the same decision now." Grace stopped walking and turned to face him. The moonlight caught in her hair, turning it silver gold. "Isaac, I am falling in love with you, Grace Brennan Harrison. Maybe I never stopped, somewhere deep down where memories live even when we cannot reach them. But even if this is entirely new, even if I am starting from nothing, I want this. I want you. I want the life we built together, and I want to keep building it." "I never stopped loving you," Grace whispered. "Not for a single moment, even when you woke up and looked at me like a stranger. My heart knew you." Isaac cupped her face gently in his hands. "May I kiss you, please?" He kissed her softly, carefully, like it was their first kiss, and in many ways it was. Her lips were soft against his, and she tasted like the wine they had shared at dinner. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. "That was nice," Grace said breathlessly. "Very nice," Isaac agreed. "I would like to do it again sometime." "How about now?" They kissed again under the moonlight, and this time it was deeper, more certain. Isaac felt like something had clicked into place, like a piece of himself he had not known was missing had been found. Over the following weeks, Isaac and Grace rebuilt their relationship step by step. They went on more dates, stealing moments between work to be alone together. They held hands walking through town. They kissed goodnight at Grace's bedroom door, even though Isaac wanted more and could tell Grace did too. But there was something sacred about taking their time, about choosing each other deliberately. The freight business continued to thrive. Isaac found he had a knack for problem-solving and negotiation, and clients responded well to him. He and Grace made a formidable team, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. In the office, they were partners. Outside of it, they were learning to be partners in a different way. One warm June evening, they were working late finishing up paperwork for a major contract. Everyone else had gone home, and the office was quiet except for the scratch of pen on paper and the distant sounds of the river. Grace was bent over a ledger, her brow furrowed in concentration, and Isaac found himself just watching her. She looked up and caught him staring. "What?" "I was just thinking how lucky I am. Even with everything that happened, I ended up exactly where I am supposed to be." Grace set down her pen. "Isaac Harrison, are you getting sentimental on me?" "Maybe I am." She stood and walked around the desk to where he sat. "I like this side of you. I am told you like the old side of me too." "I did. I do." She sat on the edge of the desk. "Do you know what I loved most about you when we first fell in love? You saw me as an equal, not as a woman who needed protecting or managing, but as a partner. You trusted my judgment and supported my decisions even when they were risky. You never tried to take over or push me aside." "Of course not. You are brilliant at what you do. Anyone with eyes can see that. Many men in this town do not see it. They see a woman running a business and think it is unnatural. Some refuse to work with us at all because they do not want to deal with me." "Then they are fools missing out on excellent service," Isaac said firmly. Grace smiled. "That is exactly what you said the first time too, word for word actually. Maybe I am consistent. Maybe you are just yourself, memories or not." Isaac stood and took her hands, pulling her to her feet. "Grace, I do not want to sleep in separate rooms anymore. I want to be your husband in every way, not just in name, but only if you want that too. I know this has all been strange and complicated, and I will understand if you need more time." Grace's eyes searched his face. "Do you mean it? You truly want this, want us, even without remembering? I love you. The you who exists right now today. I love your strength and your kindness. I love how you laugh at terrible jokes and how you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you are thinking hard. I love working beside you and talking with you and just existing in the same space as you. Whether I remember our past or not, I want our future." "Then come home with me," Grace said. "Truly home." That night they made love for what was the first time for Isaac and a reunion for Grace. It was tender and passionate and perfect. Afterward, lying tangled together in their bed, Isaac felt more complete than he had since waking up with his missing memories. "I wish I could remember our wedding night," he murmured, stroking her hair. "We can make new memories," Grace said. "Better ones, even. I do not know if they could be better than this." She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with such love it made his chest ache. "We have time to find out, all the time in the world." Summer rolled into St. Joe with heat and thunderstorms that rolled across the plains. The freight business boomed as wagon trains prepared for the journey west, and Isaac and Grace worked long days keeping up with demand. But they made time for each other too. Evenings sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Sunday picnics by the river. Quiet mornings drinking coffee before the world woke up. Isaac's memories did not return, not fully. Occasionally, he would get flashes, fragments that might have been real or might have been his imagination filling in gaps. But he found he did not mind as much as he thought he would. He had grace, he had purpose, he had a life that felt full and meaningful. The past year might be lost, but he had the present and the future. One evening in late July, Grace came home from the office with unusual excitement in her eyes. "Isaac, I have news." "Good news, I hope." "I think so. I am pregnant." For a moment, Isaac could not process the words. Then joy crashed over him like a wave. He swept Grace up in his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are. Dr. Matthews confirmed it today. He thinks the baby will come in March." Isaac set her down carefully as if she might break. "Are you happy about this?" "I am thrilled." "Are you?" "I am terrified and excited and so incredibly happy I can barely think straight." He pulled her close. "A baby, our baby." That night they lay in bed talking about the future. Names they liked, how they would rearrange the house, whether it would be a boy or a girl. Isaac felt a contentment settle over him that went bone deep. "I want to be a good father," he said quietly. "I want to be present and patient and teach our child to be kind." "You will be wonderful," Grace assured him. "You already are wonderful. I just wish I could remember if we had talked about this before, if we had planned for children." "We had," Grace said. "We talked about wanting a family someday, but Isaac, even if we had not, this is real. This is happening now. Our child will be born into a world where both parents love them desperately. That is what matters." As Grace's pregnancy progressed, Isaac found himself becoming even more protective and attentive. He insisted she rest more, took on extra work at the office to reduce her load, and fussed over her in ways that made her alternately laugh and roll her eyes. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she reminded him one September morning when he tried to prevent her from lifting a stack of papers. I know, but humor me. I just want you and the baby safe and healthy." She softened, kissing his cheek. "We are safe and healthy, but I appreciate the concern even if it is excessive." Fall arrived with cooler temperatures and leaves turning gold along the river. Business slowed slightly with the end of the traveling season, giving them more time together. They prepared the spare room as a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and building a cradle from scratch. Isaac proved to be better at carpentry than he expected, and the cradle turned out sturdy and beautiful. One October evening, as they put the finishing touches on the nursery, Grace said, "We were married a year ago this month. October 15th. Isaac looked up from the rocking chair he was testing. "Would you like to do something special? Celebrate, maybe?" "I think we already are," Grace said, gesturing to the room around them. "Building something new together. That feels right." But on October 15th, Isaac surprised her with dinner at the Patty house again, the same place they had gone for their first date after his memory loss. He had arranged for their wedding photograph to be brought to the table, and seeing it was surreal. There they were, younger and happy, faces full of hope. Isaac in a suit, Grace in a white dress with flowers in her hair. "We looked happy," Isaac said, studying the image. We still are. I am sorry I do not remember that day." Grace took his hand across the table. "Isaac, I need you to stop apologizing for something beyond your control. You did not choose to lose your memory. And honestly, falling in love with you twice has been extraordinary. How many women can say they got to experience that? When you put it that way, I suppose it is rather romantic." "It is very romantic. In 50 years we will tell our grandchildren about it, and they will think we are making it up." Isaac laughed, feeling lighter. "Grandchildren, one step at a time, Grace. Let us get through having this one first." Winter came early that year, with snow falling in November and temperatures dropping fast. Grace grew bigger, and Isaac grew more anxious. He read every book about childbirth he could find, much to Dr. Matthews's amusement. "Mr. Harrison, women have been having babies since the beginning of time," the doctor told him during one of Grace's checkups in January. "Your wife is healthy and strong. Everything is progressing normally. But what if something goes wrong? What if I do not know what to do? Then you come get me and I will handle it. That is what I am here for." Dr. Matthews clapped him on the shoulder. "Try to relax. Anxiety is not good for you or Grace." Easier said than done. As February turned to March and Grace's due date approached, Isaac found himself barely sleeping. He prepared everything he could think of. Clean linens, hot water, supplies the doctor had told him to have ready. He made sure the house was warm and comfortable. He cooked meals in advance so Grace would not have to worry. On March 12, 1875, Grace woke him in the early morning hours. "Isaac, it is time." He shot out of bed so fast he nearly fell. "Time, the baby. Now." "Yes, now." Grace was breathing carefully through a contraction. "Go get Dr. Matthews, and Isaac, try not to panic." He panicked anyway, running through the dark streets in his nightshirt and boots to pound on the doctor's door. They hurried back together, and then Isaac found himself relegated to waiting while Grace and Dr. Matthews were closed in the bedroom with the midwife, Mrs. Fletcher. The hours that followed were the longest of Isaac's life. He paced the hallway, listening to Grace's occasional cries and hating that he could not do anything to help. Peter had arrived at some point, alerted by a neighbor, and he sat with Isaac in solidarity. "She will be fine," Peter kept saying. "Miss Grace is the strongest person I know." Finally, after what felt like years but was actually about 8 hours, he heard a new sound. A baby's cry, thin and outraged. Isaac froze, his heart pounding. Dr. Matthews opened the door, smiling. "Congratulations, Isaac. You have a son. Both mother and baby are healthy and doing well." Isaac did not remember crossing the room, but suddenly he was at Grace's bedside. She looked exhausted and radiant all at once, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. When she looked up at him, her eyes were full of tears and joy. "Meet our son," she whispered. Isaac looked down at the impossibly small person in her arms. He had dark hair like Isaac's and appeared to have Grace's nose. His eyes were closed, tiny fists waving. Isaac felt his heart crack open in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Isaac breathed. "You are perfect. Grace, you are amazing." "Would you like to hold him?" With shaking hands, Isaac took his son. The baby was so light, so fragile. He looked down at that little face and felt a love so fierce and immediate it was almost frightening. "Hello," he whispered. "I am your father. I am going to try very hard not to let you down." "You will not," Grace said softly. "I know you will not." They named him James after Grace's father. Little James Harrison came into the world screaming and seemed determined to continue in that fashion for the first few weeks. Isaac and Grace stumbled through new parenthood with exhaustion and wonder in equal measure. Isaac discovered he had a talent for soothing the baby. He would walk the house at night, James against his shoulder, talking softly about everything and nothing. He told his son about the freight business in St. Joe and the river. He made promises about the future, about teaching him to ride and work and be a good man. Grace would watch them sometimes, Isaac pacing with their baby, and her heart would feel so full she thought it might burst. This was her family. They had been broken by circumstance and rebuilt themselves into something new and somehow stronger. By the time James was 6 months old, the freight business had expanded enough that they needed to hire additional staff. Grace interviewed candidates while Isaac handled existing clients, and together they selected 3 new employees who showed promise and shared their values. Life settled into a new rhythm: work during the day, family time in the evening. James grew from a screaming bundle into a smiling, curious baby who was fascinated by everything. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, patient and playful. He built toys for James, sang silly songs, and could always get him laughing. One evening in September, after they had put James to bed, Grace and Isaac sat on the porch watching the stars come out. "You ever still think about your lost memories?" Grace asked quietly. Isaac considered the question. "Sometimes, but less than I used to. I have wondered if maybe it is better this way." "What do you mean?" "I got to fall in love with you twice. I got to choose this life twice. How many people can say they consciously chose their family, their partner, their path?" Most of us just stumble into things and hope they work out. But I fell in love with you knowing nothing except who you are right now. I built a relationship with you based on the present, not the past. That feels like a gift, actually." Grace leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought of it that way. Also, I got to court you properly. Flowers and dinners and walks by the river. Some men just rush into marriage without doing the work." She laughed. "You did do the work the first time too, you know. You were very romantic. Good to know I am consistent." They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Isaac spoke again. "Grace, I want you to know that you and James are my whole world. Whatever I was before, whoever I might have been, I am yours now, completely and forever." "I know," she said simply, "and we are yours." As James grew into a toddler, the house became louder and more chaotic. He was an active child, into everything, curious and fearless. Isaac spent countless hours chasing after him, pulling him away from danger, and marveling at how someone so small could create such havoc. The freight business continued to grow. By 1877, Brennan Freight Company was one of the most respected operations in Missouri. They had expanded to include a small warehouse and were negotiating contracts throughout the Midwest. Isaac had proven himself an invaluable partner, and clients specifically requested to work with him. In the spring of 1878, Grace discovered she was pregnant again. James was nearly 3 years old, running around and talking constantly. The idea of adding another child to the mix was both exciting and terrifying. "James is going to have a sibling," Grace said, watching their son play in the garden. "Do you think he will be okay with that?" "He will adjust," Isaac said confidently. "And he will probably love having someone to boss around." This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because they knew what to expect. Grace continued working until she was too big to move comfortably, and Isaac took over more of her duties without complaint. James was fascinated by his mother's growing belly and liked to talk to the baby through it. In November of 1878, their daughter was born. The labor was quicker this time, and by evening they were holding little Eleanor Harrison. She was tiny and perfect, with Grace's golden hair already visible. James was brought in to meet his sister and stared at her with wide eyes. "Baby," he said uncertainly. "Yes, this is your sister Eleanor," Grace explained. "You have to be very gentle with her." James reached out and carefully patted the baby's head. "My baby." "Our baby," Isaac corrected gently. "She is part of our family now." Watching James try to help with his baby sister was both adorable and nerve-wracking. He wanted to hold her constantly and got upset when she cried. But he was surprisingly gentle, and Eleanor seemed to sense her big brother's presence, calming when he was near. Life with 2 children was exponentially busier than with 1. Isaac and Grace learned to tag team, supporting each other through sleepless nights and endless demands. But through it all, they remained partners, facing each challenge together. One night, after finally getting both children to sleep, they collapsed into bed exhausted. "Remind me why we thought having 2 was a good idea," Grace said, but she was smiling. "Because we are gluttons for punishment," Isaac suggested. "Or because we love chaos. Or because we love each other and wanted to build a family together." "That is a much better reason." Grace rolled over to face him. "Isaac, do you ever regret staying in St. Joe? You came here just to deliver a letter for your brother. You could have left and lived a completely different life." "I never regret it, not for a single moment. This is exactly where I am supposed to be. Even though you lost a year of your life, especially because of that, in a strange way, losing those memories made me appreciate everything I have now. I do not take a single day for granted. Every moment with you, with our children, is precious because I know how easily it could all disappear." Grace kissed him softly. "I love you, Isaac Harrison, in this life and any other." I love you too, always. The years continued to pass, marked by the growth of their children and their business. James started school and proved to be bright and curious, much like his mother. Alina grew into a cheerful, affectionate child who had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. Isaac's memories never fully returned. Occasionally, he would have moments of familiarity, a sense of déjà vu, but nothing concrete. He made peace with it. The past year he had lost was truly gone, but he had built something better in its place. In 1881, Samuel, Isaac's brother, came to visit from Kansas. It was the first time Isaac had seen him since before the memory loss, though they had corresponded by letter. Samuel was shocked by how much Isaac's life had changed. "Last time we spoke, you were a bachelor who swore he would never settle down," Samuel said over dinner. "Now look at you. Married, 2 children, running a successful business. It is remarkable." "Life has a way of surprising us," Isaac said, glancing at Grace across the table. "Sometimes what we think we want is not what we actually need. Grace must be extraordinary to have changed your mind so completely." "She is," Isaac said simply. "She changed everything." Later that evening, Samuel pulled Isaac aside. "I have to ask, the memory loss, does it still bother you?" Isaac thought about it. "Not really. It did at first. I felt like I was missing something fundamental, but Grace told me our story and then I got to live it myself. In some ways, maybe I am luckier than most people. I have no doubts about my choices because I made them twice." Samuel shook his head in amazement. "You always were resilient. I am glad you are happy, Isaac. Truly glad." By 1883, James was 8 and Alina was 5. The freight business had grown so large that Isaac and Grace hired a manager to handle day-to-day operations, freeing them up to focus on their family. They had achieved something remarkable, building both a successful business and a loving home. One evening, the whole family went down to the river to watch the sunset. James was skipping stones while Alina picked wildflowers. Grace leaned against Isaac, his arm around her shoulders. "You remember that first night we talked?" Grace asked. "When you woke up and I told you I was your wife, how could I forget? You looked at me like I had broken your heart." "You had, in a way, but you also gave it back piece by piece until it was whole again." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "You did the same for me. I woke up lost and you gave me everything. A home, a family, a purpose, a love worth living for." "We gave each other those things," Grace corrected. "We built this life together." James ran up then, excitedly showing them a particularly flat stone he had found. Alina was not far behind, demanding that her father lift her up to see better. Isaac scooped her up with one arm while examining James's stone with appropriate seriousness. "That is an excellent stone," he declared. "Your best one yet. Can you teach me to skip it, Papa?" "Of course." "Come on, let us try together." As Isaac walked down to the water with both children, Grace watched them with a full heart. They had been through so much, she and Isaac. They had lost and found each other in the most unexpected way. But standing there watching her family, she knew that every trial had been worth it. Isaac looked back at her and smiled, that same warm smile that had made her fall in love with him twice. She smiled back, grateful for every moment they had shared and all the moments still to come. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The Missouri River flowed endlessly past, carrying freight and dreams and the constant promise of tomorrow. And on its banks, the Harrison family stood together, exactly where they were meant to be, building their forever one precious day at a time. Years later, when their children were grown and they had grandchildren running through the house that had once seemed so big and now felt perfectly full, Isaac and Grace would sit on that same porch and remember. They would talk about the strange twist of fate that had taken his memories and given them the chance to fall in love twice. They would laugh about the chaos of raising children and building a business simultaneously. They would hold hands and watch the sunset and be grateful for every single day they had been given. Isaac never did regain those lost memories, but in the end, it did not matter. He had something better than memories of a past year. He had a lifetime of moments built consciously, chosen deliberately, lived fully. He had loved and been loved in return. He had built something lasting with Grace, something that would endure long after they were gone. And on quiet evenings, when the grandchildren were finally asleep and the house was peaceful, Isaac would pull Grace close and whisper the same words he had said that night by the river so many years ago. "I love you, in this life and any other." And Grace, her hair now silver but her eyes still that same remarkable sage green, would smile and respond the same way she always had. "I love you too, always." They had lost a year and gained forever. In the end, it was the best trade Isaac Harrison had ever made.